Can you believe it? There's just 3 weeks left to go in your AFL fantasy season. And whether you're going to win a hat, whether you're trying to win it overall, get a PB ranking, or get that league victory, no matter where you find yourself, here at the Coaches Panel, we've got our 10 top trade targets to help you through the decisions you need to make heading into round 22. My number one trade target to kick it all off is a player that if you haven't owned him, gosh, it's been painful this year, but now is still enough time to be able to afford Max Holmes. 8 of his last 10 games have been 100 plus, and in that period of time, he's had just the one of those hundreds be under 110, including that 136 last week against Port Adelaide. Importantly, he's owned by 89% of the top 100. So if you're in that mix or trying to get in that top 100 hat conversation, this is the type of player that is either a separator to go against if you really want to. But as I'm going to talk about, the fixture probably doesn't indicate that that might be the best outcome. This week, he's got a matchup against Essendon. He got a 131 on them about 8-9 rounds ago. And they're the number one matchup right now for easiest to score against inside mids in the last 5 weeks. It's outstanding. Then he's got Sydney. So there is a possible James Jordan tag coming, but he's not a 100% centre-bounce mid guy. Even last week is about 50%. He's still moving and spending some time on the outside on the wing, still drifting back, taking the odd kick in here and there. So he's got that permission to float and move. And so even if a Jordan tag comes in round 23, the combination of 89% ownership in the top 100, as well as the kind of the flexibility that under this coaching regime, they just let him move and roam and do what he likes. You could see him almost trying to find ways and places to break that tag. And then the final round of the year, it is Richmond. He got a 122 on them back in round 17, and they are the third easiest team for inside mids at the moment. With 2 of the 3 outstanding matchups, I think that's as good as we can get with just 3 weeks left to go in the year. He is the kind of guy that is so highly owned. He's discovered a ceiling in this back half of the year. And if you're not an owner of Max Holmes, I'm a little nervous for you as you enter in to the final 3 games of the year. If you already own him and you're looking for another trade target, let's hit you with another one. Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. He's been in this for like 4 or 5 weeks in a row. He's absolutely tearing it apart at the moment. And people look at last week's score and go, it was a little underwhelming. No, I'm sorry to disappoint you with 100, but only 36% of the entirety of AFL Fantasy have their hands on him right now. It's 99% in the top 100. Again, I would not want to be that one coach sitting in the top 100 right now without Naz. He is tearing it apart. And let me make a bold statement in sound, but I think in reality you would agree with. You cannot win AFL Fantasy without Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. You just can't. And even if you think you can be the one of 100 that makes it happen, the variance of luck that has to go your way is unprecedentedly high, because what he has is he's got that unbelievable ownership, 99% of the top 100. He's got unbelievable scoring history, and he's got a ridiculously good fixture over these 3 weeks. And so the probabilities of winning AFL Fantasy overall in a rank, different, of course, in a league setting, but to win it, you need something drastically chaotic to go your way and against everyone else. I just don't like to put that balance of risk into my side where I am the 1 out of 100 that needs it to go my way. I'm nervous, my friend, if that is you, maybe that could be something you could correct. It's why for me, he's still so critically important to get. This week, they've got a Tigers matchup. He got a 112 on them earlier in the year. That was before he's gone on this last couple of month tear. But it's a plus matchup for inside mids, for halfbacks, for general forwards. It's just an outstanding matchup. You want to get your hands on it. And then it follows up the subsequent week. We've already talked about Essendon being the number one inside midfield matchup over the last 5 rounds. That's who he's got in round 23. So it is bang, bang over the next fortnight. And by the time you get to round 24, politely, the damage is probably done anyway. It'd almost be irrelevant, but he did get a 102 on them early in the year when he was playing as that creator and halfback distribution outlet. But the dynamic around the Giants has changed a lot. Often we would think, oh no, this is where the Bedford tag is coming. But that has not been in existence over the last couple of months. Clearly, the Giants have changed the dynamic up of their team, and more recently, it's a pretty tight four. It's Green, it's Xavier O'Halloran, it's Cogs, and it's Callaghan. Like, this is the four that when fit, they seemingly want to run with, and they want Bedford to play in other components of the ground for them. So, yeah, I do expect him to get some level of attention, but all the variables here, I know it's expensive, one of the most expensive players in AFL Fantasy at the moment. But if you don't have him, you watch the game as a pure hate watch. That's all it's going to be, is my number 2 trade target for the week. Let's get out of the defensive eligible options. Let's get something forward of the ball for you. It's Gryan Miers. He's coming back towards that $1 million mark, a 122 last week against Port Adelaide, and he's pushing to be one of the better forwards, not only just over the last couple of weeks and months, but over the totality of the season. Because since round 9, he's just only got the one score under 87. So not only are we seeing a guy that's developed ceiling this year, we'll talk about the Cats run in a moment, but for 2/3 of the games he's played this year, he's not hurt you with that 60s and 70s score. It's outstanding to have a guy that's in a team that's doing so well. And Geelong are placed in this beautiful position because while they have 2 of their 3 matchups are easy and all 3 of them are out of top 8 contention. Yep, sorry, Sydney, I'm putting you in that space. It's fair, to be honest. But they are pushing deep into a finals push and need to maintain not just winning, but some big wins along the way here to give themselves that definitive top 4 spot. And so I think the combination of Geelong putting the foot on the throat to retain and maintain top 4 positioning, the fact he's got 2 of these 3 are outstanding matchups, and that he's got real no poor basement. Gryan sits beautifully in this spot for you. So he's got Essendon this week. He played them 2 months ago, but he got a 112 on them. Okay, that's good. The Swans matchups that sits in the middle of these 2 outstanding matchups. Yeah, okay, not awesome, but not exactly horrible either. And then the final game of the year, it's a 102 against the Tigers. I'd be shocked if he didn't put a really handy score with lots of forward 50 entries coming for the Cats. Maybe not as popular to others as it might seem, but to me, I think this is probably the best forward to trade into. There's not a heap of value, quote unquote, but honestly, like I said, you're looking for 2 minimum amazing matchups to find a way to get in on a player, and it's why Gryan, for me, is my number 3 trade target. Let's stay in the same team, in the same position, for a lot of the similar reasons. But my number 4 trade target is Jeremy Cameron. The hunt for the 100 is well and truly on. And my gosh, it's wild to say, but he could get there without a final if a couple of these games get messy, which I think they may just do. Geelong are looking for Jezza at every single possible option. And not only is that good for Jeremy with the opportunity to get easier goals than maybe historically he might have had a way to kind of get through, but actually makes life easier for the Geelong general forwards like a Gryan. But look, let's look at these 3 matchups in isolation. And like any key position forward, it's the volume of goals that is going to get him to that 100+ score. But this is actually some pretty good matchups. So he's got Essendon this week. The last time he played them, it was a 98. They're top 4 for key position forwards to score against Essendon. They really don't have much of their best 22 on field at the moment, but certainly inside that defensive line at the moment. He kicked 6 goals on them last time. I can imagine he'd get fed a little bit more. This could get messy. The week after that, it's Sydney. Now, they don't have that key position stopping power at the moment that they've previously had with the likes of a Tom McCartan being in that spot, with him just recovering from injury. Just 2 weeks ago, as an illustrative point, the likes of Hogan, Cadman and Stringer combined for 8 goals, 9 between them as their 3 key position forwards. If Geelong get that volume of service and not ease of ball, but that volume of service and the lack of key position ability to slow down on the Cats, it could be another big game. And then it's the Tigers to wrap up the year. He only kicked 4 goals, but it was 4 goals, 5 the last time they played, and he went 117. They're top 3 for key position forwards scoring against them at the moment. I would say all three are good, favourable matchups. I can't see him dropping anything really under a 70. It is a bit of a risk-reward style play, but at 850 odd K, the value's still sitting there, and I can see a lot of coaches going all in on round 24. I'd almost jump now and get the good matchup against Essendon earlier this round. For me, he's my number 4 trade target. And then let's wrap out the top 5 with the guy that you probably hate watching more than Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera if you don't own him. Like, this is the greatest 10, 12-week run of Brody Grundy's career. Here's my number 5 trade target. He's coming off the back of a monster 150 score last week. In the last month, his lowest score is 126, and he's gone 12 consecutive tons. And crazily, there are 15 coaches in the top 100 that don't own him. I'm nervous for you, my 15 coached friends. He's got the Lions this week, which is a pretty neutral ruck matchup. The last time he played them, all the way back in round 1, he scored a 95, but Grundy then versus Grundy now is a completely different environment. And then the Cats and the Eagles are his final 2 games of the year. Over the last 5 weeks, Geelong is the easiest ruck matchup. Over the last 5 weeks, the Eagles are the 5th easiest ruck matchup. So again, that's what I'm looking to hopefully help you with, is guys that have at least 1 outstanding, but preferably 2 great matchups for the final 3 games, and Grundy sits in that pocket. Look, it is really hard to be able to justify spending $1.2+ million on him, but he's the kind of guy that has not only been in unbelievable form, but has an unbelievably good fixture to go with it. It's just not the player I want to go against. Yes, I've got a couple of forwards and a couple of defenders above him, and the only reason is it's just so much money to justify. And when you do have the likes of English and Gawn sitting there, yeah, I get it. It's hard to spend another 200,000, or if you're Nankervis or Meek or whoever else you might have had when you got rid of Cherry a few weeks ago. I get that it's hard to get all the way up, but the go-to-sleep factor on this one is really high. You would feel better if you had all 5 of these guys in your team for the final 3 weeks of the year. So that's my top 5. So it's Holmes, it's Naz, it's Meyers, it's Cameron, and also Grundy. Let's give you some divergence now. Let's give you a couple of unique options. One forward is pretty unique. One ruck is unique in the top percentages, and then we'll hit you with a couple of good value buys. But let's give you my most unique for the round. And again, it's somebody that I think could offer extreme value for you. Alex Neal-Bullen is my number 6 trade target. I did not expect to put him in my trade targets this year. I definitely didn't. But right now, if you look at the last 3 weeks where he's scored a 135, a 108, and a 91, they're not all easy matchups, by the way, if you include that Hawthorn game in there. In the last 3 rounds, he's the top averaging forward in AFL Fantasy. Yeah, he's on fire at the moment. And the other 5 players, well, other 4 in the top 5 are all Geelong forwards. No one's averaging as much as him that's outside of the Geelong ecosystem at the moment. And he's got just as good a run. It starts this week with West Coast. The number 1 best matchup over the last 5 for general forwards is outstanding. And Adelaide are sharing the points. It's not all funneled through one player like a Geelong feels like it might be. It's all tunneled through Jezza. The Crows are so equally scoped. And he's not just a goal scorer. He's getting involved high up the ground through pressure, through link-up and transition scoring. I like that. Then it's the Pies. Look, they are the hardest matchup for general forwards. I understand that. But this finals type match feels like that's where Alex could pick up some of that as additional pressurized points that could help. It's not a great matchup, but again, they've then got North Melbourne the week after, which is a pretty, I wouldn't say favourable, but it's more neutral than favourable for general forwards. But the reason I like him here is it's the kind of game, we've seen what North have done over the last couple of weeks, is when teams put them on their butt early, they're finding it really hard to get up off the floor. And in that final week of the year, it might just be difficult. The other thing to factor in here is when you're looking at players to trade into, you do need to consider teams that are pushing for finals. And that's why outside of Naziah and Grundy, who are just clear unicorns at the moment, everybody else to date have been teams that are still defining exactly where their finals team is going to sit. And so when I look at an Alex, I look at a guy that the Crows have no real interest or need to sub. Like, it wouldn't shock me this week against West Coast or 2 weeks' time against North Melbourne if the game goes to script, that a player that's really structurally important to them, like a Dawson, like a Rankin, like a Rob, like a Worrell, these kind of intricately important players, a Thilthorpe is another, they go, you know what, it's 2/3 of the way through the game. We're 50 points up, 40 points up, game's done. Okay, cool. Let's take the cautious approach and manage your workloads. They're just not going to do that with Alex. And that would be an historically frustrating thing if we trade into a guy and he gets a sub because he's being managed. It's just not happening with Alex. The number one forward over the last 3 weeks, with 2 out of the next 3 are really good matchups. And it starts this week with West Coast. If you're looking for something unique to create a pop, this is as unique as you're going to get. And to do it at under 800K might just give you that extra bit of cash to be able to afford a Naziah, to afford a Holmes, to be able to afford a Gryan Miers, whatever it is you need to be able to do. So to get what he's doing, and I think will continue for 2 of the next 3, but certainly this week is the gravy matchup, I actually really like Alex Neal-Bullen as a trade target for you. My number 7 trade target, finally getting back on the tons after a month without them. It's Errol Golden, a 114 last week against the Bombers after those 4 straight sub-hundreds. He's got 2 pretty neutral matchups and 1 outstanding matchup when you look at the history of the next 3 games to come. But you take his historical pedigree and what it lines up, and really, there's no real inside midfielder or midfield option that's, let's call him $1 million. He's like 17 grand more than that. But there's no player around that $1 million mark that you just go, I'm really happy to trade into him. Have you noticed that this year? Upgrading to a premium mid for the most part, you're like, I think it'll be good. It's the rucks and the half-backs that are tearing it apart. But I like this one because the Lions this week, his last 2 games against them, he's gone a 108 and a 110 plus score. Okay, that's positive. Then he's got the Cats. They're not as easy as they have been at points of the season for inside mids, but they're still fine. But his last 2 against them is a 151 and a 128. That's good. And then again, when you're trading into a player now with 3 games left to go, you need at least 1 outstanding matchup and the others to be at least okay, and which is what Errol's are. Then he comes up in the final game of the year against the West Coast Eagles. His last 2 against them, by the way, are a 145 and a 127, and they're the number 2 easiest team to score against over the last 5 weeks for inside mids. And I just look at a player like Errol and go, well, this could be absolutely awesome. Like, Brisbane don't tag. We're happy to let Nick Dacos roam free for a fair chunk of the game. I know they structurally did some things to lock that up a little bit, but as good as Errol is, he is no Nick Dacos. I just think if I'm trading into a premium mid this week, this is probably where I'm looking. I know Rowell's been outstanding, but I feel like the fixture's starting to tighten up a little bit through there. I know Bont would be amazing. It's hard to get in there. I like what Errol could be at the price point that he sits. I think he offers some value. I'm happy to go there. My number 8 trade target for you is Jack Sinclair, owned in 92 of the top 100 teams in AFL Fantasy. So again, nervous moments for the 8 coaches sitting in hat contention, and there's a few underneath that, I understand, that do not own Jack Sinclair. With all the attention of opposition coaches coming in on Naz over the next 3 weeks, with the Tigers, the Dons, and the Giants, I can understand a space where Jack really does emerge. 3 of his last 4 have been 100 plus. That's a good sign. He's got the Tigers this week. They're the number 2 best team to have the ball in the hands of players taking kick-ins, which is exactly what Jack does. And earlier this year, he scored a 134 against them. He's then coming up against the Dons, who are the best team for players that taking kick-ins to be able to get that average boost pop, which is outstanding. And then it all ends with GWS. I think we'll know a lot about the Giants and where their team is or isn't going to be at over the next fortnight in terms of a deep finals push, hanging on for dear life, wherever it happens to sit. But I love 2 of these 3 matchups. For Jack, I think it could be an outstanding little run home over the next 3 weeks. The Saints have an awesome fixture, and I'd want at least 2 of their players, and really the 2 being Jack, Naziah, or Rowan. I would want two of those three ideally in my team with just how good their fixture is. You can't trust McRae. You can't trust Steele, clearly, at the moment. They're probably the guys that I would want to get my hands on. Let's go wild for a name for you. Now, the ownership would not say it's wild, but I just want to put this name out there. My number 9 trade target, Tristan Xerri. Wild, I know, but hear me out. If you can't get up to the Grundy, the Gawn, the English, or the Marshall, if cash is either a challenge in terms of what you've got able to generate as a one trade up, or the combination of what you're doing means you need to take a sacrifice of something under 950,000. This might be as good as it can get. It's wild that still a quarter of AFL Fantasy own him. So it tells you how many coaches and how many teams are just laying dormant at the moment. Given he was out for the 3-week suspension, there's just a lot of coaches that are playing AFL Fantasy that are checked out, unfortunately. Hopefully, though, if you're in a league setting or you're in the upper echelons, he's going to be on the unique side if it's been active in those areas for it. So he's got the Giants this week. We've got to start there. Over the last 10 weeks, they're the 4th easiest ruck team to score against. And just last week, Briggsy gave up a 129 on Tim English. So that's good science. The week after that, who has he got? He's got the Tigers. Nankervis and the Tigers are the 4th easiest team to score against over the last 5 weeks. So the history of these next 2 teams are really, really good. And then to end the year, he does have a pretty tough matchup. He's got the Crows. Now, the start of the year matchup against the Crows is a little bit misleading. That's where he had kind of some of those soft tissue concerns. There was a period of time early in the first quarter, people thought he'd going to get subbed out of the game. But I think this could be a really interesting game. I just talked about a teammate of the Crows in Alex Neal-Bullen about how there are certain players I wouldn't be concerned that they'd get subbed out. With the final game of the year and the importance of Riley O'Brien, of what he's brought to the team, there's a genuine world where the Crows go, look, it's final game of the year. If a top 2 spot's locked in, if they happen to win the next 2 weeks, then it is, because one of those is against Collingwood. I can see them just going, you know what, Rob, take the week. Give Lachie McAndrew an opportunity to have a crack and almost do an early tank in terms of players they pick. And Xerri could eat in that game. But 2 of the next 3 are awesome. And the reason I'm advocating for him here is it is like $300,000 from him all the way up to Grundy. It is a lot of cash. And if the combination was a Grundy and, say, I don't know, someone at that 600K sort of range, a Bailey Humphrey, just picking a name, as opposed to a Xerri and a Meyers, I think I know where I'd go. It's the Xerri and Meyers combination, by the way. So yeah, unique, got some history, clearly going to be fresh and frustrated and ready to go. 2 of the next 3 are pretty good matchups, and that third could still be great if a few things go his way. I'm happy to throw him in the mix, and I think North will want to just absolutely crack in for 3 more weeks to try to put a bit of respect on their name, maybe even get out of the second last position on the ladder. And then my final of the top 10 trade targets for the round is Locky Whitfield. 92% of the top 100 have their hands on Locky at the moment, and it's with good reason, because he is cheap, my friends, compared to what he has done. In the last 3 rounds, there's only 2 defenders that are averaging more than him. Want to guess who they are? Naz and Holmes. You got it right, my friend. Well done. But this fixture is awesome for him on the run home. It starts this week against North Melbourne. For players that play in that halfback distribution role, scoring lots through transition, it is the second easiest for all options at the moment. It is awesome. You want to get your hands in on it. Then it's the Suns. It almost like jolts and jars the complete opposite way, where the Suns are the 3rd hardest teams for players in his position to score. But for what it's worth, yes, he did score an injured 23 on them earlier this year, but the games before that was a 146 or 106 and another 106. So he's got some good personal history against the Suns. We'll have to watch and see how that all lands. And then it ends the year with St Kilda, who are a top 6 team for kick-ins to score against and also for wing halfbacks. So 2 of the 3 are pretty good. 1 is outstanding, 1 is good, 1 looks difficult. But at that price point, it is hard to go against Locky Whitfield. And so those are my top 10 trade targets for the week. What are the trades you're making? I'd love to know. Why don't you comment below and let me know the moves you hope to make this week in AFL Fantasy. The deal is, if I name one player that you are trading into, you have to like this video. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, we'd greatly appreciate if you could. Later in the week, a Supercoach edition of this lands, as well as another strategy session. But until later in the week, we wish you well, happy trading, and we'll chat to you soon.